This is Jesse Ryunosuke Matsuoka, our son, my youngest son. The older son, Toranosuke, he had to flee for meetings, but thank God we're using his wonderful big screen. This is father of the former Iwatora-zeki. We call him Tora, Tora-san. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good morning. Well, I'm Leslie.
And I am Laurie of Sumo Kaboom.
That's right.
Yeah. Just thank you very much for giving us part of your morning. We know you're all busy.
Fun.
We'll just launch in, but we also want to give our listeners a little peek into the life of a sumo wrestler. Now, we've had the opportunity to talk to Konishiki, but we haven't had anyone other than that, really, who has been in the stable, raised in the stable, and from what I understand, from the age of 14. 14, yes. So 13. And to give us just a piece of, I don't know, just a idea of what that life was like, especially in the Kasugano stable, and the environment and atmosphere, growing up such a young age in the, I imagine what would be a heyday of sumo.
Tora, made it to, can I introduce some things?
Please.
Yes,
Because
please.
I have a fascinating background. And I'm writing my memoir now, as you know, and I mentioned him a lot, and I have a whole chapter on him. And you wanted to know how he got into sumo. Should I tell you? Because it'd be difficult for him to really go through this quickly.
Yes. He
had one older brother and two younger brothers growing up. His father had been a policeman, and his mother was a homemaker mother. But his father became an alcoholic, and he'd go out gambling with the Yakuza. The Yakuza.
Yes.
And that's his business, and it's fine. But the thing is that one night he gambled away the house that they had. And Tora was 11 years old, and his older brother was a year and a half older, and he had a brother who was 4 and one in between, maybe 8 or something. And one morning, the boys woke up, their mother had run away, their father had run away, and the guys showed up, and they threw them out of the house onto the street and said, your father lost this in a gambling game, you're out of here, and they threw him on the street. And it's just by a miracle that, I don't know how, I never got the detail of how they connected, but they had a grandfather who was, blood relative, a real grandfather, but he was a basket case in a wheelchair from a stroke. And he was married to his second wife, who was really not part of the family, but she took them in and raised them and took them off the street. And I get chills every time I tell this story, because, they could have wound up gangsters, they could have wound up, run over by a truck, who knows? But they all thrived. The older brother became a businessman and started his own business and became the patriarch of the family, did very well. He had a beautiful house in Osaka. Tora decided to go into sumo, and I'll tell you why in a second, because it's a very moving story, which I write about in my book. Tora was starting to make money as a sekitori, and his older brother, of course, was doing very well. So they pooled their finances and sent the third brother to college, and he became a professor. And I remember he passed away, right? Your brother passed away some years ago. It's a shame, but I remember him. We used to go down to Osaka to his older brother's house, and his brother was a little bit heavy set, and he always wore these glasses, and he looked like a professor. And he's a very sweet guy. So he married and had a child. And then the younger brother did marry eventually. And I used to meet his mother. His mother had been knocking on the door of the older brother and the older brother's wife, and the wife kept telling her to get lost because she abandoned the family. And for I think it was a year or 2 years, she was knocking on their door all the time, begging to be let into the family again. And finally they let her in. So when we went down to have dinner with them several times from Tokyo, she was there, and she was a very beautiful woman, and he looked very much like her, which is an important note, because when he was 13, in sumo, you're allowed to enter sumo when you're 15. You have to have graduated from junior high school, and then they'll accept you. They accepted him because he was an orphan. He was also large for a 13-year-old. He was beefy, he was strong, he'd been working at a yasaya, right? From the time he was like 11, and from the time they got tossed out, he got a job in a vegetable shop, and he was always working and very industrious. He's got a very great work ethic. So they allowed him into sumo because they felt bad for him. He didn't really have a family.
Was that not commonplace, but did that happen anywhere else where there might be other orphans in other stables? A lot.
His particular story is the only story of its kind I've heard in sumo, and there are 910,000
Right.
people sumo at any one time, and I haven't heard all the stories, so I
Right.
couldn't really
Right.
answer that. But I've never heard another story like that, and I've met everybody in the top division for the last 40 years. So I mean, and so I've never heard a story like this.
Right.
So the reason Tora wanted to get into sumo was because if you make it to the top division, to the Makuuchi division, then your bouts are on television. And he aspired, even though he was small, he was 5'9", which is like tiny for sumo.
Mhm.
And at his heaviest weight, he was only 300 pounds. And Americans might say, "Oh my God!" But 300 pounds, he's like almost half the size of the top division guys. You know, he was a
Right.
small guy. But he wanted to make it to the top division with the dream that his mother would see him on television and want him again and come see him. It makes me cry every time I tell the story. So it happened because he made it to the top division against all odds, because he was fantastic. He knew every waza, every trick in the book, and he was able to do well. And he looked so much like his mother that a friend of his mother's saw him on television and called his mother and said, "You know, there's a guy in sumo who looks like you, possibly could be your son." So the mother showed up at the stadiums. They met at a coffee shop. This is the quick version that he told me. They met at a coffee shop, and he went to see his mother, which was the reason he entered sumo. And they had coffee and they chatted. And I asked him later, "Well, how did this go?" And he said, "Well," and this is very Japanese. He said, "Well, she's remarried. She has other children, so she's not my mother anymore. So I have to go."
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Wow. But the struggle of a young kid who, I mean, it's actually beautiful. You enter sumo really for love and the finding a reuniting with your mother, you know, the most important person in your life.
Deep-seated need to find
Yeah.
his mother again.
Yeah. And from what I understand, when he joined Kasugano's stable, he was the 44th Yokozuna Tochinishiki was the Oyakata at that time. Is that correct? Yes.
Yeah.
And when you came in at age 13, not knowing anything, or maybe you did know a little bit about sumo, maybe you had practiced with at school or with other kids. What was the environment coming in as a 13-year-old? I can only imagine that was scary. Was it a refuge because you were an orphan and they did welcome you in, or was it introduction into a world that was very harsh?
I'm going to do my best to translate all of that.
Yeah.
お父さんが13歳の時に、入った時に、家具がなかったから、みんな、生徒たち、力士たちは、仲良くしたかどうか、それか、もう本当に初めの日から大変だったか。
いや、すごく本当に親切にしてもらって、本当ラッキーでした。
So the quick and easy answer he had said was that they were actually welcomed him with open arms and were very nice to him. And he was actually astonished at a young age how he was respected going into that environment. And again, I'm going to kind of elaborate over here that, you know, it is stable to stable, right? The environment is truly based on the headmaster and how he runs his house. So, you know, I think my father is extremely lucky going into a very loving, you know, caring, you know, caring place.
Yeah, he used the word shinseki, which is family, and he felt like he had been brought into a family, and like he said, he was so lucky. Kasukano Oyakata, former Tochinishiki, he was a huge, you know, really gruff guy, but he was always very nice to me. He had the capability of being a pussycat and being very a feeling person. And Tora considered him his father, you know, his substitute father, you know, and he really cared about Tora a lot. And he was very good to him. Yeah.
Tora, how did you develop your style of sumo?
お父さんの技はどうやってなったか。
そう、やっぱり、体がちっちゃかったから、
うん
そう、やっぱりいろいろ、特に研究いっぱいしました。あの、特に私の同じ西国から、横綱、栃ノ海っていうと、グランチャンピオンになった人だから、そう、本当、それもラッキーでした。その人からいっぱい、いろんなことを学んで、勉強しました。
So the yokozuna of the house, Tochinomi, was crucial in him learning and leading to learning how to utilize his smaller stature and smaller body to really win and learn the waza, the techniques to grow fast. And he said he was lucky that he had such a great mentor that taught him the ways to utilize, what he had, which was, his height, but then because of that, what he could do with that within his techniques. So.
Well, and I read that he was more even like skilled at Oshi sumo, pushing thrusting as more than on the belt. And with that training, was the yokozuna of similar height, or was it just incredible skill that he was so well rounded that brought him to his skill set?
福波は背はどのぐらい一緒だったかどうか。
一緒ぐらいでしたね。
一緒ぐらいだった。
ちょっと高かったぐらいで、本当に繊細でした。
Yeah, so that was one of the reasonings was Tokunomi was definitely about the same height, which they could really speak together about, how to use your techniques, not your weight or any grappling is going to be more difficult with somebody that is twice your size. So you have to use different techniques if you're shorter. Yeah.
How does each level of sumo, Makushita, Juryo, Makuuchi, how do they feel different? What's the level of sumo like in each division?
So different. I mean, he said it in English. He's like, so different. Yeah.
So Baram was no money, no curio.
Yeah.
No then
Right.
Take after 稽古上がりのシャワーも、そう、最後に入らなきゃいけない。
Yeah.
So, 上から順々に偉い人から順々に。
Right. So even showering.
食事も。
Yeah, even eating, starting off at the bottom, you're the last to shower, you're the last to eat. Everything as you grow in the levels, it's not just an accolade. It's moving up within, your lifestyle, being able to shower,
privilege.
Yeah, privilege, absolutely. And
when he won his 2 Makushita championships, I believe he won 2. Even though he's not in the salaried ranks, did he get a little perk or appreciation or any extra accolades with that, or just no, thank you for winning Makushita?
Right. まだ給料もらってないけど、どんどん上がった時も、それも気持ちが良かったんですか？
そう、他にそう思ってたら、自分のためじゃなくて、ファミリーのためにもいいから。
でもまだ給料もらう前に、どんどん上がった時、まだ給料もらえない、そういう時も気持ちよく。
それはもう仕方ない。頑張らないともう頑張るしかない。
Yeah. So even moving up in the ranks before your salary starts, it's just an incentive that you're that much closer towards making money. And making money means that you are now supporting yourself and your family. So it just became, a consistent drive that you're moving up, an incentive to keep on going and keep on moving up, and make it to salary.
まあ、じゃあ、そう、ファミリーは本当に私の父親は、事業やってて失敗して、ビジネスやってて失敗して、うちも取られて、そう本当に寝るとこなかった。だから私たちは、本当に兄弟、いろんなところに、お願いします。今晩泊まらせてくださいとか、お願いして、そういう生活毎日してたから、本当にそう頑張らなきゃいけないって気持ちは本当に。
So with painful. It's such a failure of a father that, you know, letting down his family, that they had to beg as young kids to live in random people's homes to please let us, you know, sleep on your floors so we wouldn't have to sleep on the streets. It was that drive that said, I need to make money. So that was his drive within sumo, to not be that and be a supporter of his family that his father wasn't. And you know, as even he brings up, as you know, as a business person, he failed. So that was their drive, to be a business person and make money no matter what industry they were. So for my father, it was sumo. For his brother, it was another business, and so on. So you know, the drive of being successful was a huge force, or it's not even being successful, it was not being a failure. That was the drive. Yeah.
His highest rank was Makuuchi, or Magashira 7. And the pressure when you are in the salaried ranks and you are fighting with some big top dogs, like from what I understand, Chiyonofuji and some other, I want to talk about that, but also the pressure once you do hit Makuuchi. What is that intensity like?
幕内になった時にどういうプレッシャーがあったかどうか、やっとここまでついたからそれでいいかどうか、でそれか、まあ、ついたからもっといかないといけないっていう気持ち、どういう気持ちがありました？
そう、もちろんそれは頑張ってグランドチャンピオンになりたいという気持ちはいっぱいあったけど、でも私、本当に大きい怪我して、この四頭筋をブロッキンして、そう、もうそれからもう本当にまだ本当に一番下の夜の星まで怒っちゃった。もうノーマニー、ノーサラリー。いや、そう、食べるものも全部本当に。年はもう30いくつになってたけど、若い本当に14歳か15歳の、そう、少年の食事をしなきゃいけなかった。でもそう。
So I mean, it's a little off from what your question was, but he had answered that he had, made it up to that level, and became very successful, and that was great. And the drive would always for anyone to be yokozuna, right? So that would be the next drive once you've made it to that tier. But then he got injured. Right. And he had ripped his whole hamstring, out of his left leg, and it ripped up into his buttocks. The medical system at that point said, why don't you just lay off of it? That was their medical advice at that time. Yeah.
I still feel like it's like that today. We see them fight through massive injury. They just brush it off.
Right. And with that, somebody he was 31 at that time, but he had said that he had fallen down to all the way to the bottom rank, where he compared it to, he was eating with the 14-year-olds. And he was like, I'm done. Which, again, that was his next drive, to be like, I can't be done. I need to work back, which he did. Amazingly.
He did. It's amazing. If I could clarify some of this, because he's not going to say all of it, that in a fight against Mutsarashi, he was in this fight, a fight he should have won. The guy he was up against, certainly he could have taken, but he fell down with his left leg out at a very odd angle. And normally that's okay, because these guys are so flexible, like ballet dancers. But Mutsarashi fell on his leg that was extended at this odd angle. And what happened was that the hamstring has what they call it 4 legs, and the 2 middle legs were yanked out from behind the knee connection and snapped up into his mid thigh. So even it's this huge bulge in his mid thigh, and he looks like he has a very strong leg, but it's not. It's that bunched up muscle, and they should have done a major operation and reattached it, given him 6 months, and he would have been fine. But they said, like Jesse said, just rest for 6 months. Well, you know, it turned every color of the rainbow, and he was crippled for 6 months. And when he came back, he said it took him 10 years to make it to the top and 6 months to make it back to the bottom. And it's an incredible reversal of fortune.
Yes.
But he fought his way back up, and because he was impaired now, and I used to watch him do sumo on one leg. You can't do sumo on one leg,
No.
but he did. Because you know, you have to hold your ground, but he would have that left leg in the air because he knew if he stepped down on the left leg, he'd collapse. So he had to keep that leg in the air and never depend on it. And he would still win, and he made it back up to judo, which is the second of the top divisions, with one leg. I mean, this is unheard of, but this is the kind of, you know,
Dedication.
He has, working beyond himself. That's who he is. Yeah.
Tora, how did you make the decision to eventually retire?
いつ引退するっていう決めた気持ち。
それもう大体、もう皆さんが30から31人ぐらいが、レボは引退する。それでもう決めてたから。
じゃあ、もう年だけだったんですか？ So he had simply said, you know, the age 30 to 31 was the age that you were informed to retire. And he was like, I made it to 31. This is where I'm at. I didn't make it to Yokozuna, and I must bow out. And I mean, there obviously that, you know, that's not the case for others in the modern age of sumo that are pushing through that age and going past it. But, you know, I think it was one of those things about my father that you know,
he follows the rules.
He follows the rules, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
We want to know, I do, your most proud moment, but is there a bout or a fight with somebody that you remember that was a sweet memory or a sweet time in sumo?
一番気持ち的に、すごかった、戦いとか、戦いは誰でした？なんでそういう、そのぐらいの気持ちがあったかどうか。
そう、やっぱりファミリーのために頑張らなきゃいけない。そう、お父さんお母さん頑張ったけど、できなかった。そうやってもういなくなってできなかったから、そう、私の兄弟とファミリーのために頑張って、もう一回松本ファミリーを立派にさせなきゃいけないと思ったから、最後まで頑張りました。
でもそれで、その、相撲の人生の時に一番誰と、いや、この人と、戦った時に、本当にすごかったと思った時ってありました。それかも
う。
そう、もちろん、横綱大関、そういう有名な人と戦った時に、
それで勝った時
はさ、本当にすごく嬉しいし。
一人は覚えてますか？
大西とか、ハワイの。
No. That would be
Jesse.
Yeah, 何回も。
He met Takamiyama many times, but Takamiyama was like 4 times bigger than he was.
He was over what, 600?
Yeah.
He was probably about 600, maybe 590. Yeah. So, 6'4", 5.
真ん中にやって土曜して、してら、本当に私、彼の本当に、いつしか見えないの。
Yeah, so when he's on the in the ring, all he sees is his belly button. That's how big Takamiyama, Jesse. Yeah. And he's like, I'm just in awe of his belly. So imagine you're fighting somebody and you can't see over the mountain of the belly. There's a belly up there. You know?
Oh my gosh.
That was definitely one thing, you know, fighting the Yokozuna.
But he went up against Chiyonofuji also. what did you
そう、千代の富士と会った時も、どういう気持ちがない
いや
ですか？
ー、彼も本当にすごかったから、すごいなと思って、でも、負けては入れない。
千代の富士と勝ちました？
いやー、負けます。多分1回か2回は勝ったけど、多分20%だけ、あとは80%は、
But that was Chiyonofuji 若い時でしょ？
そう、若い時か。
Yeah, but so even then he was saying he was so muscular and so big.
Yeah.
So Chiyonofuji fighting him, he probably had about a 20% win rate with Chiyonofuji. And that was Chiyonofuji's younger age, where he was definitely still just a brick house, as I would put it in his words. So he was definitely in awe of his strength and being able to fight such a strong person.
And he mentioned to me the other day, talking about going up against Chiyonofuji, that you remember what he looked like. Well, he worked out like a fiend for his shoulders because he kept dislocating his shoulders. So his shoulders were crazy, strong. But his whole body there was hardly any fat. It was all muscle. And he said he had such a tight body that he couldn't believe it, like nobody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember being a young age, and I had the honor and luck of running around the dressing rooms while my mother was painting, drawing at the stadium. So she would just leave me in the dressing rooms with the guys.
I'd ask the younger guys to babysit him.
Right. And yeah, Chiyonofuji would be one of those guys that would be like, yeah, come here. And just he's like, let's do a little battle. And I would just be like slapping him, and it'd be like slapping a wall. A wall. Like, I don't think that's normal. Like, that's not normal. And that's what people were probably, fighting against, was just a wall. And just hit the wall and fall back. So yeah, I can imagine what my father had seen during his younger ages as well.
I worked with Chiyonofuji for probably 22 years. The last 22 years of his career, right through his Danpatsushiki when he had his hair done, and then after that, I was always following him around, doing drawings, and he was like a mentor to me. He would tell me things that nobody else would think of. And I don't want to go into that right now, but it's brilliant stuff. The guy was like a Renaissance man. He really was, and he was special in every conceivable way. And I used to, I'd sit there and I'd do drawings, and if you want to see that, I'd turn the sketchbook around. He'd say, "Oh yes, I have the best Tora."
Yes, he was definitely a very proud man. That was for sure. Yeah.
I love that. Oh my goodness. I could sit here forever and just ask these questions because it's just so fascinating and interesting to me.
I just want to say thank you.
Oh, domo arigatou gozaimasu.
Yes, arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you so much for your time. It's an honor to get to talk with you, sir.
Yeah.